What's up, y'all? It's Shuffle, and in this Darkest Dungeon 2 video, we're going to be going over the video I put out like 2 weeks ago at this point, or like right before I went to PAX, where I asked for your ideas on how to balance heroes going forward, because I feel like that's one of the biggest issues holding up the game currently. So I'm going to go through a lot of the comments. I'm going to talk about what's good, what's not good. Don't take offense if I try and argue against something, you know, but other than that, it's gonna be a good video. And to make this video even better, got a sponsor. Let's take a moment to thank the sponsor of our video and showcase the game a bit, and this is Bloodline Heroes of Lythis, which is a hero collecting game with kingdom building elements. However, it does have one very cool and unique difference. And that difference is that you get to play dating sim / matchmaker by combining all of the other races in the game to make your own unique characters. When you combine, go figure, their bloodlines. You get a lot of choices such as elves, demons, demigods, orcs, my personal favorite, I love my greenskins, dwarves, lycans, dragonborn, vampires, and another new cool addition to the demigods, which are tide raisers. The game is free to play, so you can download it using the link below or the QR code, which should be here. And doing so will give you a welcome pack that's worth about $20. While you're deep in the midst of trying to combine all of your bloodlines to create over 4,000 different possible hybrids, don't worry, you won't need Pascal's triangle from your math class in order to figure out all of these combinations. With many possible combinations of bloodlines that you can make, that means there's a lot of strategy for you to utilize. Another champion to talk about is Lionstone, who got a new skin recently, so if you're like, man, I don't really vibe with this fantasy stuff that's going on, well, guess what? Now you get a knight who looks like they're from the future. But wait, more. What? Yes, Bloodline is going to be checking out this video because there will be a pinned comment at the top, and the first 30 players that leave their account ID and username will receive a free Legendary Succubus. This is a great mage to help carry you through the game. Thanks again, Bloodline, for sponsoring the video, and let's get back to the content. Thank you, Past Shuffle, for making that absolute banger of an ad. Now let's talk about the heroes and go over some of your suggestions. We'll start at the top comments, and we'll go through, and since we have the characters up, we'll be able to take a look in real time. Look at that production value. I got a switch on my other monitor, too. Oh, God. All right. So the first one, that 80 upvotes. Congrats, Silk Clover. Make every path like Vessel and Flagellant, and then buff, nerf, rework, multiple skills, and paths on every character. We need this part for sure. It's definitely gonna take some time, but I guess that's the point, right? That's why we're talking about this. Remove minus HP from Berserker Hellion, and let's see why this is a great and important point. If you're unaware, the way that Flagellant and Vestal paths work is that they don't give you, you know, plus speed, minus HP, things like that. They just change how the character works fundamentally. And with Vestal, pretty good job overall. The only thing that is a bit unfortunate is that Seraph feels a bit stronger than, I mean, it feels a lot stronger than Wanderer, so it kind of feels like Wanderer doesn't have a point. Both Flagellant, all the paths have a point. Wanderer, very strong on him. Maniac, very good on him. Exanimate, good, especially in that Blight team. Scourge, really interesting, and also, again, fundamentally changes the character because you want to make him melt down during boss fights, or tough fights. Grave Robber kind of got this treatment on the way out into 1.0. A little bit. Because you see, like, affected skills being a big list and stuff like that, but ultimately the goal is to have every path be similar to this, because this is obviously the best implementation of this. Instead, we have things like, you know, Virtuoso, just plus speed and HP, Sharp Shot, huge offender of this, just plus damage and speed. And these paths aren't really exciting. The third string of paths, you can see the evolution they did much better. You know, Physician plays way differently. It's not just raw stats. Well, there are a lot of stats, but it's not, you know, just plus damage. and minus HP. And then Yellow Hand, one of my favorite paths. And again, it does have the damage and HP thing, but you know, you got Highway Robbery gets buffed, you got a bleed debuff synergy, you got double cross remove and stuff. So Carcass is probably the best example. Carcass is a really, really awesome path idea, but because of the way the game is balanced and the encounters and the hero kits and stuff, Carcass, as cool as it is not made for this game. It's made for some other different game where control tools are more plentiful and having a low damage tank can be perfectly fine. The thing with Carcass, you can make it work, right? You can make all of this stuff work, but what I want to highlight is the amount of effort that you have to go into. And with Carcass, you know, if you want to make it shine, you have to stack a bunch of damage alongside it. One of the common things I talk about, like if you really want to see a low damage, no damage type of variant, right? Like if you had Poet Leper, low damage, you have Carcass Hellion, low damage, Survivor Runaway, damage, then Physician Plague Doctor. Even though these are all like support, tank paths, or whatever, it is very hard for this team to win compared to if you ran Alchemist and Arsonist and even Berserker, but Ravager, and flip these two. And Tempest. These two teams are the same characters. They play way differently, but this one is going to go way further with less effort compared to the other one, like the other variant with the paths. So we can rebalance paths and the base skills, so Wanderer is something that you might want to actually do, you know, like Flagellant, then that's great. That's definitely what we need, if I can expand on that point. We Work Heroes have remaining paths like the new system. We just talked about that. 2 suggestions. Everyone wants the path system, right? That's the biggest thing. Occultist changes are interesting because these comments came out before the Occultist changes, which largely were pretty good. He still needs a bit more, but he feels like a much better character. That's awesome. This one, totally agree with. Make heroes or paths have passive abilities. Currently, only 2 characters in the game have passives, and that is Hellion. No, 3. No, it's 2, right? Let's see. You got Hellion, who has the low damage passive. You have Leper, who has the combat start blind, and Vestal. I had to think about that, but you can argue someone like Vestal kind of has a passive with the conviction generation, so maybe. And Flagellant, you know, if he gets any low health buffs, I can't remember like off the top of my head. So the biggest 2 examples of passives are Leper and Hellion, and it would be very nice if everyone had some kind of other passive, you know, that either was path reliant or what, you know, like Grave Robber, how she gets bonus damage and stealth with Nightsworn. Why isn't this just her passive? You know, go into stealth, it doesn't have to be 50%, it can be like 25% damage, and it's not path reliant, you know, and the Nightsworn could give the extra 25%. I'm talking about, you know, removing damage from paths and stuff, but, you know, at least this is conditional and flavorful. Instead, you know, we just have Sharp Shot. I'm always going to bash Sharp Shot, man. This next comment refers to very powerful specific skills for characters where they're pretty much ubiquitous and you build around them no matter what the team is. And for the most part, I do agree with the idea. The cited examples are Jester's Encore, Runaway Smokescreen, Hellion's Howling End. And then there are some other ones too, like I would say Retribution and Take Aim. So we're going to go back into Game RQ real quick. And so with Take Aim, this doesn't change on any of his paths. It's just this absurdly strong move that regardless of the path, if you want to play Highwayman, quote, optimally, you're usually pressing Take Aim and then spending the crit and then pressing Take Aim again. So it's like a 2 to 3 turn rotation. And it doesn't matter that he has all these other cool skills because everything starts with this one. And with Hellion, Howling End was cited. This has gone through a couple nerfs. It could probably use a bit more of a nerf, or Conditional Thick likes to propose the idea of it does more damage based on the amount of winded you have, which I think would fix Hallian's biggest issue, because it doesn't matter if it has how big the cooldown is, it doesn't matter if it doesn't ignore block and stuff. What makes this move incredibly powerful is that you can press it turn 1. So if you remove the ability to press it turn 1 and immediately make the fight into a 3v4, because that's what it does now, then you do go a bit further in helping balance this. The next example was Runaway Smokescreen, and this move is pretty loaded, possibly busted. It is the best move on the bar before Firefly. Firefly I would say is second. But with Runaway, you know, you have this, and the reason I'm hesitant to actually try and nerf Smokescreen, even though it's really good, is the fact that it's a debuff support style move. We don't have enough of these. Like, we don't have enough good tools like this to use to make it so damage is a less appealing option. You know, the other things that we talk about here, you have Take Aim. This is a damage move. Don't let the dodge fool you. Howling In, damage move. Then there's Smokescreen, support move, and I have to double check the other one. Oh, Encore. Yeah, so Encore is quite insane as an ability, and I often say this is the best skill in the game because it can be any other skill in the game. Getting an extra turn where you don't take damage over time is incredibly powerful, and it doesn't, you know, tick down your buff durations. So Encore is very, very strong. It's easy to misuse because sometimes there are little technical things you can do. You know, someone's on death's door and bleeding, and oftentimes the healer can't get to them in time. And something people don't use enough is like Encore on the dying person. You don't take the bleed damage, and then you pass your turn to actually heal. So little things like that are really fun, and this is another one I'm hesitant to nerf, even though it is this powerful. I would rather nerf Jester himself, like maybe his stats or something like that, or maybe buff some of the other things so it's a little more appealing, although Jester is a very, very strong character. I just don't want Encore specifically to change, because not only is it fun, you can be really creative with it, and I don't, you know, like, you're not creative with Take Aim or Howling In, you're just, you know, killing stuff. Encore, you can do some really crazy combos if you find them, and that feels good, so I don't want to change that necessarily. But there are other things too, like Retribution. This has already gotten nerfed once, where it got the cooldown. The cooldown doesn't really slow it down that much. Used to be able to press it every turn, but, you know, Man-at-Arms still has some insane tools, even though they are defensive, like Defender. I don't think people understand how busted this move is, especially upgraded. Hold the Line, also very, very powerful, especially if you're playing on, like, not Stygian, but just, you know, Infernal Torches. So there are a lot of candidates to get nerfed, but I would prefer to nerf, you know, damage paths and damage abilities before support stuff. Again, seeing more people asking for the path changes. This is like the top requested thing, so Red Hook, if you're watching, that's what people are asking for, mostly. And then we come down to a nice list. I like that it's ordered as such, makes it easier for me, so thank you. Outright rework Occultist Anamnesis, or Anamnesis, however you say it, the ability to not be Hound's Harry from DD1. And I think it's okay where it's at, personally. It's largely not considered to be a good move, especially outside of Aspirant. Again, paths fixing characters. This is another reason paths need to get changed. As a little tangent here, but a lot of characters in the game, you know, when people tell me, oh, this isn't that bad, or this is how you're supposed to do it, it's always run this trinket, run this team, run this path, go to these regions, you know, skip the fetter, fight this confession boss and stuff. And all of these things I'm trying to propose, besides the, you know, paths being the same as Flagellant Vessel, is the Wanderer characters need to be strong enough to where the paths aren't direct upgrades, or the trinkets. Characters are getting fixed through trinkets and paths instead of having good core abilities. So if your instinct is to tell me, Chef, it's okay that, you know, Anamnesis is good on Aspirant, even though it's not good on the other things, you know, it's like, why can't Anamnesis always be good? And then it's better on Aspirant, for instance. So, definitely agree with the sentiment, but I disagree with reworking Anamnesis as a stolen ability. I actually think it's okay. It's a pretty good move. But now, pretty much the new hotness is Malediction. Then Adrenaline Rush, providing positive tokens. Adrenaline Rush is already very, very strong. You know, it clears Winded. It heals per target attacked, not even hit. Like attack and miss, so you can use Adrenaline Rush and then throw Crow's Feet to hit all 4 people, and then heal 4 times, and then yop, and you heal like 6 times in 1 turn if you really wanted to. And that is way too good. I would even say Adrenaline Rush needs to be nerfed. You know, take away the healing on multiple targets thing, just to tone it down a bit. Toe-to-toe cleanse chance is interesting, because right now toe-to-toe is the most efficient way to clear Winded, so it would be nice if there were other ways to deal with Winded, because Bloodlust got a bit better, and then we have Adrenaline Rush, which we can't always hit, and then we have toe-to-toe, which is incredibly consistent, so that's why people default to it. Allow Leper's Break to ignore blind tokens on combo by default. I mean, Break could really use some help. You know, people, again, when we talk about Break is not a good move. You know, it's an interesting move, but it's just not quite there in terms of being, you know, good. And people say, oh, when you run Monarch, I use Break or Hue because Chop is bad on that path. And that's exactly the problem I was pointing at before, where the path makes some things better or worse, but it doesn't mean that the skill that you swap in is necessarily good. It's just slightly better because it gets nerfed on, or the other skill got nerfed by the path. So if Break was good by default, that'd be okay. Up the damage floor on Chop to 8 by default, and then 10 on Mastery. I would probably leave it at 6 base and then 8 on Mastery, but it is weird that it goes to like 6 to 16. So Leper, because Leper's already dealing with blinds every turn, and, you know, he's a tank, so he can get weakened, or the enemy can put up block because he's hitting frontliners, and so his damage already gets neutered pretty hard, so it'd be nice if it came up a bit just by default. Ministrations and Mantra usable from 2. I think Mantra on, what is it, Chaplain is usable in 2, but again, this is fixing something with a path. Yeah, so you can use Mantra anywhere with Chaplain. But in terms, this is kind of one of the few ones where I don't really mind. It'd be nice if Mantra was just usable everywhere with every path. That would be pretty cool, but I do agree with Ministrations in 2. Ministrations is not a super strong ability. It's a really cool support ability, and as I keep talking about, we have too much damage focus in the game. And so having something like this, which is a purely defensive tool, I think it would be okay if you can use it from rank 2, because that's where something like Chaplain wants to be. So you can make Bonk, you know, better. There's a lot of little tweaks you can do with Vestal, like Divine Grace isn't that strong. Consecration of Light's a bit too strong. Hand of Light is bad on like every single path. Ministrations is good, but you can't use it in 2. Mace Bash could really just use something, man. It's not that good. There are little tweaks you can do everywhere, but I do like the idea of Ministration specifically being in 2. Give all the super niche abilities more general purpose and utility. Illumination, Tracking Shot, Disorienting Blast, Hearthlight, Echoing March Suffer. They are niche, and when you do need them, they do what they're supposed to, which is really cool. But for some of these, it's really just about changing percentages. Like with Disorienting Blast, it would be nice if, I think the weekend or something is conditional, or not conditional, but like percentage based. So it would be nice if it wasn't. Yeah, so like 25% and then 25% on Mastery. There is no reason this shouldn't be 100% weaken, or even 200% weaken on Mastery, and then give it like a cooldown or something, you know. And then same with Blinding Gas, giving low percentage crit or mark token combo tokens, you know, just little little things can use some tweaking, and a lot of people, from what I'm reading, aren't even talking about stuff like Blinding Gas, because Plague Doctor isn't thought of as a weak character because her core stuff is very strong. So the Blight Kit, really good. The heals, really good. Incision, pretty dang good. And so with Plague Doctor, you know, and some of these characters, I think people are gonna miss some of the points. So I'm gonna make sure I tell you all about that. Really want Unchecked Power utilized more in Occultist. And that would be obviously fantastic because having more uses for Unchecked Power would be cool. And I would like it, this is just my addition here, but I would like it if Unchecked Power and the effects it gave kind of scaled like Conviction, because, you know, Conviction on the heals, you know, you do more if you have more Conviction. Mace Bash and Judgment do more damage normally with Conviction tokens. So it would be cool if for Occultist there's some kind of scaling, you know, one Unchecked Power token increases the crit chance of weird reconstruction by like 30, 2 makes it guaranteed, you know, and then 3, if you spend all 3, the minimum healing floor goes up to like 3 or something. That kind of stuff would be pretty cool. Some characters need some actually attainable CC, crowd control, in their kits, even if it's an ability used once or twice in an encounter. And I think this is another good way to talk about a larger problem, because the other reason that damage is such a focus in this game on the player end is because the control tools are harder to pull off. You know, I can just hit Plague Grenade every single turn and get some pretty decent results. Meanwhile, if I want to stun with Man-at-Arms, I need a mastery point. He has to get the mastery point. I need someone else that can set combo, and then my turns have to go in the right order so I can follow up. This gets more annoying because the enemies just get to stun you for free, and there are other really devastating control tools. Like, there's very little setup the enemy has to do to be really damaging. And again, some of you may say, oh, that's by design because, you know, enemies this and that. But really what it leads to is it just doesn't feel good for the player, because the enemy is going to disrupt you, move you around, stun you, blind you, whatever, like 2 blind tokens, what have you, and it's very easy for them to do it. Meanwhile, the player has to jump through hoops to get this stuff done. And it's understandable why these limitations were put in place, because in DD1, stuns were incredibly powerful, but we don't necessarily need stuns. It would be nice if we had more access to blind and weaken, stuff like that, or if there's like some kind of inverse crit token, I don't know. But something that's interesting too, if you never noticed, is that I believe every single blind in the game except Fade to Black has a cooldown. So we have Blinding Gas, cooldown kind of understandable because it hits 2 people, but then we have Smokescreen, cooldown. Fade to Black, no cooldown. Leopard Blinds, no cooldown on those. I think that's it. So blind isn't even like a common thing, you know, and 2 of the 3 of them have cooldowns, so you can't spam them. And I don't quite understand why, because, you know, not only do you have to hit the enemy, get through debuff resist, because debuff resist is more balanced on enemies than it was in DD1, because in DD1 is primarily low across the board. A lot of difficulties already trying to get blind to stick. Not that it's impossible, it's usually consistent in your favor anyway, but it, you know, it's not all the time. And again, what's the player gonna do? Am I going to use my turn that does blind? Like, Blinding Gas is the best example, because this is only on your bar if you're running Physician, or until you unlock Plague Grenade from her stories. Then it's gone. And the reason Jester's Fade to Black is so good is because it has no cooldown, but also it's just a decent ability. You know, Jester can move backwards, it's got some solid crit rate, you know, the damage is okay, and it just fits Jester. He likes to move, so it fits in there. Tranquil, friend of the show, nothing specific. Adjusting the balance to reward control playstyles more. Agreed. Debuffing, shuffling, stunning. Totally agree. Rather than full offense being the dominant strategy, would solve a ton of balance issues. Yes. And then, example, no one uses half occultist kit because burning stars exist. Great point. Probably a much better way of saying what I just spent the last, minute or two saying. Trust Red Hook to do the right choices. I do as well. They just have to sit down and do it. Because, like, every time they do some kind of balancing, it feels good. Just look at the occultist buff that we just had. Feels really good. So why can't we just do that for everyone? Take aim and retribution are never a misplay. They're too strong. I don't know why there's 8 responses. I'm afraid to open this, so I'm not going to. Differentiating the damage over time effects would be nice. I totally support this, because right now, they're all the same thing with just different colors. They're all damage over time. One's red, one's orange, one's green. And it'd be nice if that was different. You could add certain debuffs to them, or effects, like how burning and pyrophobic or whatever it is, when you're on fire, it destroys positive tokens. Give the fire dot, like a 10% chance to remove 1 positive token from the character. That would be cool. There's other things too, such as blight. What if blight made it so you can't gain block because, like, your armor's melting or whatever? And then bleed. I don't know. Just, if you got an idea for bleed, let me know. These are just things I'm picking up off the top of my head. But I like that a lot. Okay, there's a big wall here, but we'll take the topic sentence. I think the number one issue is to do something about team slot fighting. There are a few characters that end up feeling like they do the same thing. Hellion, Leper on the front lines. So I think this is a larger issue again. So great job highlighting it. And that is, there's not enough diversity in the hero kits and the hero paths to make it so different options are appealing. You want to put Leper in rank 1 because if he gets knocked out of position, it's really bad. You want to put Hellion in rank 1 because Ravager likes it and you get Iron Swan. You want to put Man-at-Arms in rank 1, and if he gets knocked out of position, you have Hold the Line, which puts him in rank 1. So there are a lot of characters that want to be up front, and it's okay because that kind of puts it on the player to make sure everyone's in the correct spot. That's part of the game. But where it gets unfortunate is with some of these things like Ravager, Hellion, and whatnot. This person, what they're saying is largely correct, where characters feel kind of the same, especially the frontliners. So it would be nice if some things were changed to help that. And one thing we might see, I don't know, but one thing I always read about Hellion is with Berserker, make it so if it bleeds is usable in rank 1. And I don't agree with that specific change, or at least the position, because you don't want Hellion to have the same Omni-Reach playstyle she did in the first game. Instead, what I'd propose is that you could use Bleed Out from rank 2, which means you free up rank 1 for someone, Bleed Out gets to be pressed, and then you still have if it bleeds, but you can't hit rank 4. And I think that's a good compromise, but let's see. I think the heroes need passives. I already talked about it, but agree. Suggestions about the path system. A lot of people want to change the path. Again, these were posted before the occultist changes. What if occultist Binding Shadows had a daze versus combo or stun? That's only reserved for Dismas. I'm sorry. Jokes aside. It would be nice if... Well, no, I like the Binding Shadows we have now, but I do see what Vogan's trying to get at. Yeah, changing how Unchecked Power works is gathered and spent. That, as a whole, would be really cool. And a great notable exception here is we lost Hands from the Abyss from DD1, which was occultist using his frontline presence to stun something. And that move was interesting. I mean, obviously it was super broken because it was very powerful and had a lot of stun support and trinkets. However, you did have to put one of the squishiest characters on the front line. And so having that be an acceptable risk was nice. Occultist lost Hands from the Abyss and really didn't get something super strong to replace it. Although I will say Malediction getting buffed is pretty nice. I'm going to skip more of the occultist stuff. Light characters outshine the fire and bleed characters. Currently, we only have one fire character, and that's Runaway. There's other fire stuff, but we only have one fire character. And the reason I would say that it feels like the Blight ones outshine the other two is because there's just a lot of Blight synergy with the Blight characters. Like Flagellant can do stuff off of them, off Blight. And we have Plague Doctor with Cause of Death. You can use any damage over time, but it's really easy to just build a Blight team and ramp that. Whereas, as I was saying, Runaway, there's no burn support. And then with Bleed, all the Bleed characters, so we have Hellion, Highwayman, Jester, to an extent Occultist, and Plague Doctor with Incision. There's not as much synergy and support between them. And the paths that enable the bleed stuff largely are worse. For instance, Alchemist is insane, Surgeon's still pretty good. And then we go to Highwayman. I should probably open the game again. We go to Highwayman. You have Open Vein. Oh, I heard this was a bug that you can't change skills at the crossroads, but we have Highwayman and Open Vein. Pretty decent normal attack for this level. And then we get, you know, Yellow Hand, which isn't... It's a fun path. It's not the best in terms of power level. We come back to Berserker that we talked about before. Decent path idea, but way weaker than Ravager, so you don't want to run it. And then finally we have the Jester's Soloist, where Soloist also not the best path, because again, losing HP and speed on a character that's supposed to be nimble, fast, and dodging is very, very detrimental. And then 20% bonus damage isn't super good outside of Finale, because he doesn't hit that hard anyway. And that brings up another thing with Soloist. You get the bleed skills and stuff, which is cool, but you get that huge damage boost. And the way you probably want to play this character is to use Finale and... what is it? Solo. Because the dodge off Solo helps you stay alive, even though you have less HP. The speed negates the big speed penalty that it has. And then the bonus damage is best on Finale. So it's like, you have a bleed path that you'd rather be hitting Finale on. And so we have all these bleed synergies out here that just aren't, that they feel aren't, or, and they feel that they're not as good because all of the support and the paths and stuff for them are just frankly weaker. So I think if we get overall hero balance, we balance some skills, we balance some paths, bleed teams might just, you know, surge and take off, which would be nice. Dead of Night giving loot instead of HP be more thematic. I agree. Being able to buy hero-specific trinkets at the first in would help some of the more underused paths. And as decent of an idea as this is again highlighting what I was talking about before, where having the characters getting fixed through trinkets is just not the business. I'd rather the base kits were better, so we didn't have to consider ideas like these. Not that this is a bad idea. I think it's a fine idea. It just, again, highlights the bigger problem, that the core kits of the characters are not that good. Debuff moves should be stronger. We talked about that. Unchecked Power. HP healing is fine as of now. Stress healing is a bit of a problem. We could use some more stress healing. I think one of the changes we all just kind of forgot about because we got used to it was stress healing on most skills used to be just usable whenever, and then there's a very quick patch where it was made so stress skills couldn't be used mostly until characters were at 5 stress or more. If we had more access to better stress healing, or if it was better balanced, we wouldn't need those thresholds, and there would be other characters we could run for stress healing. So we're not just stuck with Jester and Man-at-Arms primarily. One thing I do want to note too is that running teams with certain deficits, you know, not running a tank, not running a healer, like I've done all this, and you can mitigate it with some creativity. No stress healing very, 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 very hard to mitigate that specific detriment. And the reason is because we don't have a lot of control tools to help prevent stress from building up on people. So instead, it's I have to kill things very quickly so I don't get stressed out. You know, something like HP, you can heal it while driving. There are nodes that can help you out. You have something like Oasis, which is the best source of stress healing, but it gives you combat items that you have to use in combat. And so we just don't have really strong stress healing, and it would be nice if we did. Just scrolled past a lot of people asking about the path change for Vestal, or to have everyone change to the new path system. So I'm not trying to ignore everyone on that one, but that is the most common thing I have read through here. But I do like this idea, or at least the concept of it. So Runaway has a lot of problems chained to Ransack not being a fire skill. And I would say this is a really tough way to go about it because you already have Searing Strike. So Ransack is primarily a tool to move Runaway forward. She has ways to move backwards, but this is her only way to move forward. And if you made it so the Ransack skill could have burn, then it would feel like it kind of power crept Searing Strike in a way. So I'd be a little wary of tuning that in that direction, but it would be nice if just Runaway's kit as a whole got some tweaks so she was able to feel better than spamming Smokescreen and Firefly. Another friend of mine in the community, Thick Veiny Sausage, with apparently numbers 3062, which I think that's the auto-generated handle that he got because his name didn't used to say that. But I do agree with this, and I feel really bad calling it out. But, you know, he wrote it. He's 100% right. I think the biggest problem isn't the bad balancing. It's the lack of any sort of balancing. At the current pace, we get 3 lines of change per year. Hyperbole. By the time Red Hook fixed any 1 or 2 current problems, 20 new ones have sprung up because it took so long. Dedicating serious time to fixing hero balance will lead to less headaches in the future. He's got a little jab at the end. But I mean, I do agree. Where we do need hero balance, we've needed it for so long. And just, I don't know about y'all, but like, the most excited I have been for the new patch, it's not that FF got changed, it's not that we can pass swap it in, it's that Occultist got buffs. That has been the most fun thing for me in this patch, and it's the most fun I've had with the game since like 1.0 dropped. Doesn't matter what other content's in it, just the fact that they got some hero balancing in there, man. So yes, it would be incredibly beneficial for them to sit down and just make a dedicated patch fixing this, because at the current pace, Red Hook puts out like a new patch every 4 to 6 weeks outside of that break they took after 1.0. Which means, do we want one character to get a few things changed every 4 to 6 weeks? Probably not. And I've had people disagree with me largely, where they say there are a lot of things they should add to the game, like content, this and that, and it's like, why not both, first of all? But second, a big issue the game has is replayability. How do you make the game more replayable? Well, you make alternatives that are fun to use and feel equally powerful to stuff like Sharpshot and Ravager. You know, when people run Sharpshot with Highwayman, and then run anything else, they run Rogue, Yellow Hand, Wanderer, they go, okay, this is clearly the best. It kills things, I win more. I have no incentive to not use this. And there's a path like that for every character except for, go figure, Flagellant, and to an extent, Vestal. So all of the old characters that have the old path system and stuff pretty much get solved quickly. You know, you don't need a YouTuber like myself to tell you Ravager is good. Most people come to that conclusion playing Hellion like 6 times. And so if we had more balance and more frequent balance, or just like a big balance patch, it would be fantastic because it gives you replayability. And another point that Thick was referring to is there are more problems that spring up because it takes so long for things to get fixed. And what he usually says when he talks about this is waiting so long to do hero balancing, the enemies get balanced, the bosses get balanced, trinkets get balanced, and random encounters, modifiers, flames, what have you, they all get balanced. Then what happens when you rebalance the heroes? It might throw everything out of whack. And then guess what? You have to go back and start changing all this other stuff that was already changed and should be considered done. So this is primarily why I talk about the game desperately needing hero balance. It needed it like week 2, it needed it a year ago, it needed it yesterday, and we're not getting a lot of it. And I don't want to put pressure on them like that, but it's something that is an obvious issue. I get comments about it. I talk to people that tell me about it. I feel the same way. And it doesn't matter how much content and stuff gets put in the game if your answer to it is going to be press take aim and then shoot it. This next one's pretty interesting. Runaway needs burn pierce in her base kit. And this is again, highlighting a big issue where a lot of the combo tokens in this game don't feel good to spend. Because, you know, like the stun ones, you have to build up, and then all the stun characters are pretty slow, so it's like, whatever. And a lot of the damage over time abilities that can use combo just get piercing. You know, Runaway gets it a bit different. She spreads burn, which is cool. But like Plague Doctor, I think some of Flagellant's stuff, those are the ones I can remember off the top of my head. They use combo to pierce resist, which is a bit redundant in the case of something like Alchemist existing or Arsonist. So it would be really nice if combo tokens and how they're used were also something that got spruced up when we balance heroes. Person says they haven't played DD2 in a while, but the biggest issue is just DPS. That is what the game is all about. Maybe that's why I don't play anymore. You know, I kind of understand that. This is something a lot of us in the community have talked about for a long time, and it's just with control tools not as good as they could be. And the ones we do have are, like, the best ones are really clunky to set up. You know, someone has to combo them. The other person who might spend the combo accidentally can't attack them. And then after it hits you in the face, then you might stun it. Even though a lot of the enemies have pretty decent stun resist and impervious exists, then all we're left with is kill them first. We're going to cover 3 more here. So again, thank you to everyone for commenting. I'm sorry if I didn't get to yours. You know, either someone else said it already or just time constraint. We're going to start with this one. Not sure how to exactly do this right, but as a learning player, I want to not have a 75% chance to lose a run just because someone died. And this has been like one of the hardest things for this game to figure out. And that is deaths should be punishing. If someone dies, you know, you make mistakes, someone gets killed, it should be punishing. If it happens in the 3rd region, you know, right after the lair boss and you have to fight Collector or Exemplar, like, do you deserve to lose 3 hours because someone got crit to death's door and then died on the first check to a bleed? Do you deserve that? I don't quite think so, you know, because just that's the way the game works. And it doesn't matter how many things they give us for, you can path swap, you get mastery when you get to the end. The trouble isn't like what's happening at the end once you get there. The trouble is getting to the end after someone dies. There needs to be something about that. And in terms of what it could be, you know, the easiest bandage fix that I can think of would be like, you always start with Thrilling Tablet in the inventory. So that way, you're still kind of at roughly the same power level. Even though Thrilling Tablet is very good, you know, you still have to put it on the right person and understand how to play that character, and then understand how to play your team short-handed. So it's not free, you know. And there are a lot of times where if you use Thrilling Tablet, the other 2 die, and then only one person makes it. But I completely, totally agree with this idea. The concept of death spiral, which is where once one thing bad happens, a lot of bad things start happening that are just out of your control, is very high in this game. So it would be nice if something was done about that. This next one I like a lot because it's something that I've talked about a bit already, but it's like a really succinct way to explain it. Like the conditions to remove to be able to heal and stress relief heroes, and they say it's artificial difficulty and it's unsatisfying, and what they're referring to is the threshold. So not being at 5 stress to stress heal, not being at 33%, 25% life to heal. It would be nice if those were removed, especially because we already have things like cooldowns and limited use for skills. So it's like, so what if I can adrenaline at full HP? Like the less restrictions there are, the easier it is for the player to misuse it. The other thing that this highlights is, go figure, when you have inconsistent control tools and you don't have a lot of recovery tools that you can use, early, you have to wait. Guess what you're gonna do? You're gonna burn everything down as fast as you can. So all of these things keep highlighting the damage race problem. When I say that, I'm not saying that there's no times we should have a damage race in the game. Like occasionally it's fine, but every single fight, and a lot of you who didn't play in early access probably don't know this, but the road battles used to have a 5-round timer. So the same thing, you had to burn through it as fast as you could. And there are a lot of things that contribute to this issue. And so the sooner we start chipping away at it, the better. Spartan, another very cool person in the Darkest Dungeon community, is the comment we're ending on. But funny thing about Runaway is she suffers from, no, we actually have to nerf the specific enemy. So this is again going back to characters being designed around the enemies instead of the enemies being designed around the characters, which is way more preferable. And the reason I say that is because it's much easier to design every single enemy individually, considering 12 heroes or whatever we have right now. Whereas now, if we go back and fix heroes, we have to balance every hero with 50 enemies in mind. So there's a bigger discrepancy. The point being made here is absolutely correct. Runaway wants to go to the Sprawl. I was going to call it the library. She wants to go to the Sprawl to get burn trinkets. And the best way to deal with this is to not play her. And I don't think not playing her at all is quite correct, but out of using Bounty Hunter, swapping Runaway out of the Sprawl with Bounty Hunter is the best thing to do. And that shouldn't be like the meta strategy. Because the other places, the Fetter and the Shroud to an extent, because there's Bleed, Tangle as well. Going those places, like going to the Fetter with Blight characters, you don't lose instantly because your damage is gutted a little bit, but those characters have ways around it that you can, except for Flagellant, but you can help deal with it. And then same with Bleed, there's a lot of options on those characters getting around Bleed disadvantages. Runaway just gets deleted from the game the moment she goes to the Sprawl. And that shouldn't be. She already has enough issues. It'd be nice if that was not one of them. So, talks about Occultists and the fractional healing, which I totally 100% agree with. And I'm curious what Spartan thinks after the threshold change, which I don't think entirely fixes the issue, but it does help. Then Hellion using Berserker, talked about that. Grave Robber has a dot path, but it wants you to move or use her movement skills instead of her dot. And so with Flashing Dagger and Venom Drop, let's actually go back to the game here. With these two, again, I totally agree. We have Venom Drop. What Venom Drop does is if you are in stealth and if you use movement. So if you move backwards or forward or whatever, if you use a movement skill, she gets Blight Piercing. And I think it says that on... should say that on... maybe it doesn't. But that's... maybe I'm tripping. Maybe it doesn't do that, but no, I'm pretty sure it does. So you at least get the bonus damage in stealth. And so what this wants you to do is turn 1, Shadow Fade. Oh, there it is. See? I was right. All right. It's on Pirouette in these two and Lunge. Okay. So I thought it'd be on this, but no, it's on these. I'm not crazy. Yeah, what, like Venom Drop wants you to use Shadow Fade turn 1, so you get the Blight Res Piercing, and then you get the other benefit here, which is the blight damage dealt. But this is again showing the lack of cohesive balance with the characters. Because Venom Drop already gives you minus speed, so you have your damage over time character, who already has a speed penalty, needs to spend a turn to set up, and then they get to use the damage over time effect. But because they're slower, the enemy has already taken its second turn, so there are a lot of times where your first tick of blight isn't happening until turn 3. In fact, it's so not worth it that whenever I play Venom Drop, I don't use any of the movement skills. I just stick her in rank 3 or 4, and I just hit flashing daggers every turn. Because on average, your chance of sticking blight and your damage output is going to be higher than spending all that time setting up Shadow Fade and whatnot. There are 2 more things I want to talk about, and some of them, the first one is about stats tuning. So as you see here, Leper's only got 30 move resist, and this one, I think my Leper's memoried for move resist, I can't remember. I mean, it must not be because he doesn't have a buff here. So the thing I want to talk about with stats, Leper in the first game was the hardest to move character in the game. His move resist was super duper high baseline. Makes sense, you don't want him to be, you know, in the back, and it should be hard to get this big dude with all of this metal armor and this giant sword. It should be difficult to move this man. Whereas in this game, he's got 30 move resist. You might be thinking, oh, Shuffle, what's wrong with that? Well, you have Runaway, who also has 30 move resist. So you're telling me that this Chad, this Giga Chad of a man, is as easy to push around as this little orphan girl? No. Alright, no. It should not be. And it's very easy to miss something like that as an oversight. So, but yeah, it would be very nice if the heroes all got some kind of stat tuning pass. And this looks like it's still a bug with Alchemist here, but another thing when I talk about it's too easy to get stunned and stuff or controlled by the enemy, like look at these stat lines. I think Alchemist has a 50% stun resist. So that means that Plague Doctor's base stun resist is 10. Grave Robber's is 20. Iron Man's is 40. Man Arms is 50. That's pretty nice. 20, 20, 20, 30, 20, 30, 45 with some kind of buff. Oh, it's the chaplain tokens. I think her base is 30. That is another huge issue. You know, the player has to set up all these combo tokens to get stuns, or they have to daze them twice, which is very, very, very hard to do. The enemies don't debuff them or debuff themselves like the player does. For instance, Pirouette gives you daze, Encore gives you daze and weaken. The enemies, to my knowledge, I cannot think of a single one, debuffs themselves using an attack. So you're always at this huge, unfun, and seemingly unfair disadvantage. And then you take the idea that the enemies get stuns for free with no setup, even though you have to deal with Impervious. Enemies naturally have pretty good stun resist, like 30, 40 plus, stuff like that, just across the board. Except for Collector has like 10 for some reason. And when you take all of that, it's just feels really, really bad sometimes to play this game, unless you're going super fast and killing first. The final point I'm going to make on the subject of speed is that the speed for all of the heroes is really bad. So we only have a couple heroes that get over, I think, 5 at base, and that is Highwayman, Grave Robber. This is when they have all of their Hero Shrine stats unlocked. Occultist, I believe, Jester, and maybe Runaway. Everyone else is, no joke, 4 speed, 3 speed, 2 speed. Like Plague Doctor's 4, Man-Arms, I think 2 or 3. Hellions, 2 or 3. Flagellant's 3, I think. Vessel's like 2 or 3. I think she's 2. I think Leper starts out at 1 or 2. So just, you're so slow compared to the enemy that you're always reacting, and it's not fun. And then when you look at other modifiers that can happen, such as Hastened, Ordainment, other enemy buffs like Antiquarian that give speed, you know, all of the enemies can easily reach 6+. So you're always going second. You know, if you don't have Jester on your team, or Grave Robber or Sharpshot Highwayman, for instance, when you fight any hasten mash, you're going last the entire time. Like, they get 3 or 4 attacks, then you get to answer, then they get 3 or 4 more attacks, and that's really, really dangerous, and also just feels like crap. So, that's it for the video. I know it was a long one. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. I'm sure I missed something. If you disagree, that's fine. Just be civil about it. And I don't know, maybe this will make its way to Red Hook. We'll see. But as always, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.